What's going on? Welcome back to the third. I forgot you can't see me, JT. Usually I'm like giving you the signal to start the
Yeah,
intro.
that's
I'm like,
I was like, "Well, I'm getting you a different signal, but I don't know if you heard me say that."
yeah. So season 4, episode 7. What is going on? Welcome back, JT. You could take it from here.
Yeah, now you realize it's not as easy as it seems given an intro. Um, yeah, hey everyone, welcome back to another episode there in 20 Dynasty Podcast. I'm JT, joined by Frank and Lunas. No Jake today. Um, there wasn't anything crazy yet going on with the news and notes, although we are only a week away from the actual NFL trade deadline. So that might take up a bit of our conversation. But I wanted to start by recapping last week. And the first item that I thought of was the backup quarterbacks kind of did their job. And I would say have at least raised some questions about what's going on with the quarterback rooms. Maybe not fully replacing them, but maybe the coaches would be like, hey, we don't need you, incumbent starter, to rush yourself back. Like we're okay with how it is. I'm actually going to add someone else into here and just do it this way. So first off, we had Division 2 quarterback Tyson Baggin. They kept saying it different ways on the broadcast. Um, he was the quarterback for the Chicago Bears this week against the Raiders, and they just absolutely dominated the Raiders. Um, Badgent, that's what I'm going to go with now, calling him Badgent. He had an okay game. I mean, the team won, but it was pedestrian A dot. He threw the ball like 30 times for, I'll pull up the exact stats here. He threw the ball
Like
29
150
times
yards.
29 times for 162 yards. Um, so look, I mean, there's the quarterback wins camp and everything, and they're like, hey, look at what he was able to do. And then there's the actual underlying stats of it doesn't look like this guy's very good either. I
Also,
don't
the
know.
quarterback who he was playing against.
Also true. Brian Hoyer, shout out Patriots legend. Um, I don't know what you guys think, but to me, I'm not interested really in Tyson Badgent. I picked him up originally as a speculative ad in our home league, and I was like, what's the point? This guy's not going to end up being anything. Do you guys think he's going to end up doing anything?
No, not at all. I mean, it's Fields' job when he gets back. I think it's more just kind of interesting. I guess what I find more interesting with the Bears' offense that game was Former looked solid, so I'm wondering how the splits are going to be because he was behind Roshan and I'm forgetting the other guy's name off the top of my head.
Khalil Herbert.
And Khalil Herbert, yeah. So I think that'll still be the pecking order of Herbert, Roshan, and Foreman, but I'm interested to see how that backfield plays out.
Yeah, it's been weird because it's just basically every running back on this team's been injured.
Yeah.
To me, I'm not that interested in Deontay Foreman. He's actually one of those guys we've talked about before with the Achilles injuries. He's one of those Achilles injuries guys. I think he had his in college. He was like super good before he came out of college and then didn't really amount to a whole lot so far. But yeah, to me, I'm not Deontay Foreman. I think will get.
Is Herbert still the person you want, or Roshan?
It's Roshan to me.
Roshan's the one you'd want the most.
Yeah, because Roshan was already kind of in that split situation with Khalil Herbert as just a pure rookie coming out of the bat. Plus, Herbert's like still injured. I don't know how much longer he's going to be out for. Roshan is starting
Roshan's
to
going to be
practice
back
now,
first.
finally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Any thoughts there, Frank, on either Tyson
I
or
think that
Foreman?
Tyson begins a little bit Badgent, someone that played really well in the pre, and it kind of at least transitioned exactly how he was playing in the pre into how he's playing in the regulars. Like, unlike some of the other guys like Aiden O'Connell and Dorian Thompson Robinson, kind of came in
Yeah.
and struggled more so than played how they looked in the preseason. And the other thing I think you have to mention is just in recent times that some of these later round guys, I just think they've had a little bit more success. And obviously, you can point to Brock Purdy, who's recently come in here, but dude, the offense just looked better under Begin. Yes, the Raiders are not amazing, but they have some players. That defense isn't trash, and again, I thought looked pretty comfortable out there, as well as that extra element of making plays with his legs we saw come out a little bit, which I think is really for him to have any long-term successes. He showed that he can do a lot of the simple stuff, kind of like dump the ball off underneath, get through a couple of play decently well. But that only gets you so far unless you're in pocket passer. You also need to have that little bit of off script. So that's something to me that going forward I'd want to see if I wanted any long-term value out of him. But I don't think right now that this is a oh, when Fields comes back, it's his job. If Bajan comes in here and wins another game for the Bears, I'm not sure how you sit him. I think that you're going to get into a really awkward position if he comes out another week and plays really well. They've already announced him the starter for next week.
This
I
feels
could
like
see how they could sit him. Like, I mean, it seems like the locker room's generally behind
Dude, you
Justin
win
Fields.
2 straight as a really struggling team.
Yeah, I don't know. I think if you're not like, it makes a lot more sense to leave Fields out there. No matter if you're gonna like keep him or not after this season, even if you plan on trading him, you'd want him to increase his trade value. And then he like over the past few weeks, he's been better than he was at the start of the year. Um, I would be shocked if Fields didn't come back, even if Bajan wins this next game.
at LA is a tough ask for him to win. Not that LA has super home field advantage, but I feel like this is a good team, or should be a good team, who's going to be desperate for a win after a bad loss against the Chiefs. Regardless, this feels like a Bailey Zappi situation where it's everyone gets behind the guy for a week, then he shows his true colors, and everyone's like, all right, never mind.
Chargers actually aren't the worst team to go. They're playing the Chargers, right? Not the Rams.
They're a bad defense.
I was gonna say their pass defense is allowing over 300 yards a game.
Yeah, I don't know though. I don't think it's unless you get like some DJ Moore yak stuff going on and everything. Like, how can are you going to really justify like a guy who's averaging 5 yards a pass? Like, it's not great.
No, I still think Justin Fields comes back as a starter.
Dude, they win that football game. You cannot sit Bajan. You cannot sit him.
All right, that'll be an interesting controversy. I just don't think they're winning that game. Next up, though, this one I think has a lot more weight to it. Tyrod Taylor, he looked like the best quarterback that the Giants have had recently, with Daniel Jones being out with, I think it was still neck injury, right?
Is it a concussion or a neck injury? Forgot.
I thought it was neck, but I don't. Either way, it was some upper body injury. But yeah, Tyrod Taylor came in, played against the Washington defense, which hasn't been great, but did better since they were on a better track since benching. Is it Forbes? Is that the name of their first round draft pick at corner? Once they benched him, they were doing better, and Chase Young was starting to get a lot more sacks. But Tyrod Taylor was able 18 of 29, 279 yards and 2 touchdowns, as well as 8 carries for 25 yards against this Washington defense, leading them to a win. I will say, to throw some cold water on this, the Giants defense was very good, and I think we'll touch on that in a little bit. That kind of helped Tyrod Taylor a decent amount, not having to actually do a whole lot, because they only scored, what was it, 17 points?
14, I think.
14. So, it's not perfect, but I mean, this is a team that was struggling to score any points prior to this. Daniel Jones was getting hit every single play. Tyrod Taylor looked much more comfortable. He was willing to throw the ball, like get rid of it instantly. And I think that's what's kind of been separating the two. Tyrod Taylor is willing to facilitate. This is tough because I'm seeing you on the YouTube, Frank, so I know you're trying to chime in here. Sorry, but it's like delayed. If you want to chime in now.
I completely agree with what you were about to say, actually. So that's why I didn't want to cut you off. Is like, instantly, Tyrod Taylor is coming out of the gate. A, the Giants are doing something in the first half, which is, and B,
very first half touchdown.
Right, exactly. So like they go out there and they're actually moving the ball in the first quarter. That's 180, and then, like you said, Tyrod Taylor's willingness to get rid of the ball right at the top of his drop, right? Like that back foot hits and the ball is out. I think, as well as mainly through Hyatt, but in general, them more willing, it seemed like, to put the ball downfield one on one. I also really like that back shoulder that you got to Waller. It just felt like an offense where the quarterback was treating their receiver. That being said, I don't think that Tyrod. I think he's still just the backup. I have like the opposite take where this less interesting scenario. I think Daniel Jones, when he comes back, he's still the guy.
You think so?
I think
Yeah.
because of because if he's still the guy, I think it's because they just kind of don't have a choice because of his contract. I don't even know if it's kicked in yet or if this is the first year. Actually, I think this is the first year. But I do agree with you in terms of like the past 2 games of the Giants are the most involved I've seen Hyatt and Darren Waller, at least while like the game's competitive. In this offense, you got Saquon involved in the receiving game. I think I do agree with you in terms of Tyrod still is more so just like gonna continue to be a career backup. I think it's more of an indictment on Daniel Jones. Like the fact that it's like you kind of get anyone else quarterback in this offense and like you start to see sparks of life versus how they've looked the first few weeks.
Yeah, I've never been a Daniel Jones guy, and I mean, look, Tyrod Taylor though I feel like gets a lot of disservice.
He's always been a good backup quarterback or like someone that you can just to fill in a game.
He's been a competent like you put him in there. He's keeping your team competitive. I just think with this feels more like a Trey Lance versus Brock Purdy kind of thing, where it's like Daniel Jones is probably more talented, but what Tyrod Taylor is able to do fits what Brian Dable wants, fits the scheme better, fits the Giants as a whole as they're currently constituted. So I don't know. The thing with this though is like I don't think Dable's really coaching for his job. I think isn't he the reigning coach of the year? I don't think he's getting fired or anything. So
no, Dable's not going anywhere.
So I think he can kind of do whatever. He's not really. While every team really is trying to win, it's not like Eberflus, where Eberflus is coaching for his job. So if Tyson, Bagent, whatever, if that's your clear route to winning, okay, we're going to roll with him. Meanwhile, Dable, it's like, all right, well, maybe Tyrod gives us a better chance to win, but we don't want to ruin this $50 million contract, whatever it is. Huge, expensive contract with Daniel Jones. Like, let's try and get him running again and make sure we're not just throwing away all this money.
Part of it for me though is that I think a lot of the issues that I thought Daniel Jones was facing was almost just not trusting the offense and trusting his, and then trying to do. Whereas we have seen Daniel Jones not play that way before, and under the same offense. So I'm more willing to put this as like Daniel Jones is a punk, him missing a couple of weeks. Seeing how Tyrod operates the offense, I think be a benefit, like a little bit of a reset for Daniel Jones to kind of just step back, look at this offense and look at how he was playing and readjust a little. Not like Daniel Jones. He has had issues in the past, but it's not always Daniel Jones' number one issue is that he doesn't get rid of the ball at the top of his drop and he holds onto the foot. Not like a complete thing. So I'm more willing to be a little bit like Daniel Jones, like considering all the new pass catchers being added into the offense. We're kind of just harping in first weeks. Oh, this whole thing's not working out. The contract shouldn't have been given. Blah 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 blah. Like let's at least wait a little bit.
To be fair, I was saying that before anything ever happened,
and that's fair. I think that there's a lot of people. I mean, myself included. I saw the contract and was like, I'm not sure I would want to do that. But in this scenario, I think you have to give it some patience. And
they can't get out after 2 years. I apologize if you had mentioned that and I missed it.
What's going on, PVR? How are you doing? I had Tyrod in Superflex Basketball making my lineup. Yeah, he looked pretty good. Is Daniel Jones coming back next week? No, or is Tyrod going to be starting another week?
My guess is they'll leave Tyrod in for one more game. I think maybe in a scenario where like their backup sucked, maybe like Daniel Jones tries to play with through an injury, but like they might just phrase it as like, oh, we want him to get fully healthy. and just see who do they play this week. The Giants play the Jets. That'll be a fun game.
Yeah, I'm thinking about taking the Jets in my survivor pool just because of how good that defense is. Look,
I don't hate it.
Slim pickings already through 7 weeks. You think there'd be more than 7 good teams, but there's not really.
Yeah, the slate this week is rough too.
Yeah,
Like a lot of 50 matchups.
yeah.
That Brady quote still stays true more than ever, where he was just like, "Yeah, there's a lot of bad football happening right now."
Yeah. All right, but on the flip side of the ball, we have Sam Howell, who I talked about a few weeks ago with his sack rate, and that's still going on. He's on pace to have almost 100 sacks this year.
It's insane. The Giants had 5 sacks heading into that game, and they had 6 in the game, or the other way around, or they had 6 sacks on the season heading into that game, and they had 5 that game. One way or another, either way, it's insane.
Yeah, I'll say this: the Commanders' offensive line's not great, but they're not world record shattering bad, right? Like Sam Howell is just holding on to that ball too long. He needs to learn how to get rid of it quicker. You saw it closer to the end of the game when they were trying to make the drives. I did see him rolling out of the pocket and just getting rid of it, which he should be doing more. But this is not sustainable, and someone who's getting sacked 100 times is not going to be a long-term starter. So I'm starting to hit the panic button on Sam Howell, where I liked what I like his throws. He makes big time throws. He's willing to fit into tight holes. Pause. But he's looked good. It's just the sacks are way too much. And Ron Rivera was non-committal when asked about, is he still the starter? Is he still the guy? He's like, we're just going to focus on the job at hand, whatever. It's not like a complete out on Sam Howell kind of thing, but you would think he would give him more support.
Ron Rivera's looked like an idiot at the podium for like the past year and a half.
Yeah, but this is like the same thing with Carson Wentz. This is the same thing with Carson Wentz, though, that he did.
Oh, yeah, I know. And I'll never get over when like he didn't know his team could be eliminated.
Oh, yeah, he's like what?
Right. It's frustrating what's going on with Sam Howell, especially because like a couple weeks back, you started to see him play at another level. And now it just feels like every week is just insane, and then the next week, dog shit. But I think if you're Ron Rivera at this point, you kind of just have to tough it out and see if he can blossom into the upside that we, right? Because this guy just doesn't have enough games under his belt. It makes sense that he is into. So, like, what is turning to that really do long term? Maybe your team around and you like sneak into the playoffs. You're probably not going to win. On top of the fact that they had plays to still win the game, right? Like you could put it on Sam Howell, right? Like that what was fourth down to Dotson, the passes behind him, but it's a catchable ball. I just think that like you can't really go out there if you're Ron and be like, oh well, Sam Howell's fucking amazing, but you just have to stick with him.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned Jahan Dotson, because speaking of him, he did have a little bit of a bounce back game this week, but still nothing crazy. 5 catches for 43 yards, coming off a week last week where he's put up 0 points. And on top of that, he's been working with the special teams now. Yeah, so I don't know what the deal is. He just in the doghouse? Like, what's going on with Jahan Dotson? Because this is someone who I think had a very promising rookie season, and since then has not really built upon that.
Production-wise, he's been firmly like number 3 behind. Obviously, McLaurin's going to be the one, but behind Curtis Samuel too. But I mean, just as a pure talent, obviously, I would have Dotson ahead of Curtis. It's been weird this season. I mean, obviously the O-line doesn't help in general, especially where Dotson's kind of someone who like you want to get deep shots to as well, and you can't really stay in the pocket for more than 3 seconds or 2.5 seconds. I don't think he's necessarily in the doghouse because he's still been on the field majority of the time. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like I think his snap percentage has just still been good. It's been weird, but I still like him talent wise.
Let's see. Dotson's snap percentages according to Sleeper are he's been over 80% in all except one game against the Eagles.
That's why I don't want to say doghouse, because it's not like doghouse was like like Ayuk a couple years ago, where like he just like wasn't really getting on the field. Like Dotson's still on the field. They do 3 wide receiver sets for most of their offense. It's just I don't know. The target distribution's been weird.
Right.
Yeah.
I think part of it is that offense isn't enough passing the all three of those receivers. Like, okay, McLaurin's been the main, like, he's been pretty darn consistent. Samuel and Dotson have not. It feels like they almost trade which startable Samuel and Dotson.
Hmm.
But dynasty wise, like, I still like Dotson. I'm probably buying him more than selling. I do understand the risk, and I probably won't value him in a random first. But like right now in rebuilding league, someone that I have already traded for in some leagues, and if I have veteran players that I can't sell for pick, player that I'm probably going to continue trying to get that non-first round price.
Yeah, if you could pick him up for less than a first, I don't hate it. But I mean, if I pull up players that he's rated around still, let's see. It's just it gets tough as to where to draw the line. I'm about to have. Yeah, you guys want to keep Saquon, Cooper Kupp, or Jahmyr Gibbs? Who we keep trading or cutting here?
Wait, so Gibbs, Saquon,
Cooper Kupp.
up. I'll probably. My God, that's really tough.
Yeah, we got some cream of the crop guys here.
Is Gibbs the one you keep?
Gibbs is the L.
Well, no, just because I mean, at least keep for now because
Yeah,
like
you keep Gibbs, but then you
you sell him in a
trade
season
Gibbs for Saquon and
plus.
cut Cup, I guess. But I don't
Okay.
know.
Well,
That's
all right.
tough.
That was a bit of a distraction from where we were going. Dotson. Okay, I'm looking at the receivers he's ranked around. It's nothing. I think I would.
He's probably
I
dropped.
agree with where. Yeah, I think I'd rather have him than he's rated above Jerry Jeudy and Gabe Davis, which I definitely want. He's
Yeah, for sure.
Dotson over, and then he's rated behind Romeo Dobbs, who I'd rather have Dotson, Amari Cooper. That gets a little hairy, and Deontay Johnson.
I'd rather have Deontay and Coop, but I also think
Yeah.
that part of it is like a flaw in the like if obviously if you try to trade Dotson to contender with one.
Yeah, that's true.
But I like
Mhm.
Dotson as a long-term hold. Curtis Samuel's not going to be plans long-term commanders.
Yeah.
So there's a clear path to targets, and even if this is his doghouse stage, like that's pretty promising to me. Like he's not been completely terrible. He's still getting targets, and I think there's still upside.
All right, so that was our Giants and Commanders that we are mostly focusing on backup quarterbacks. And to round out that theme, we did have Deshaun Watson came back from injury, had a boneheaded pick, almost a second one, and then got laid out on a play where he almost threw another pick, and he got put into concussion protocol. Went under the blue tent, came back, had helmet in his hand, was putting his helmet on, which you wouldn't do if you had concussion. They said he cleared concussion protocol. Yet PJ Walker played the entire game that the Browns managed to squeak out against the Colts. Afterwards, when asked why Deshaun Watson didn't go back into the game, Kevin Stefanski, the head coach, said he wanted to protect his franchise quarterback and he expects him to start this week. We just got news earlier today that Deshaun Watson didn't have any extra damage in the MRI. So I don't know what's going on here, guys, but Deshaun Watson kind of stinks.
Yeah, I wouldn't be so much concerned about him clearing concussion protocol and not going back in the game because I think that's a completely normal response, like just not wanting to risk it. I'd be more concerned just like about how his play has been in general, like you mentioned. I don't know. I feel like we keep on waiting for him to turn, not even just old Deshaun, but maybe like 80, 75% of it. Because like as you mentioned, like even against the Colts, like up until before he got hurt, he was having like a nightmare start. I remember like looking at the stat line, it was like 1 for 5 for 5 yards and 2 picks. Like before the second pick got overturned. I don't know what you do with him. I feel like you can't. I'm sure there are people that like are still viewing Watson like, oh, I'm just gonna get off the ship while he still has value, but I don't blame anyone for thinking that it's tough to sell him and just trying to like hold through it.
In my eyes, the one move try I think is putting him into Kirk Cousins on plus if you really that want to get off the train because I mean Big Kirko's balling right now. And
Big Kirko.
He's always been good. in
he's
fantasy.
underrated, so you can actually do that kind of move without having to give up a shit. Want to get any other like even if you try to get Tua, right? Like you're gonna have to give up a ransom on top of Deshaun to actually get that done right. So I think it's either you're diamond handsing and just hoping he turns around because at least he still has the label of franchise quarterback next to his name, right? Like when you compare his price, Sam Howell's price, you're a lot safer with Deshaun than Sam Howell, and the difference is not that massive anymore. So, like, I don't really think holding Deshaun is a bad move right now by any stretch of the imagination, as long as the prospects are significantly better than a lot of the other quarterbacks he's ranked around. But it's not been fun. I don't disagree.
Yeah, and I mean, Deshaun is still so. You take out this game. What's going on?
Robert
Cat?
Miller, dude, he's just coming in from the. Of course, the one time we talk about
Robert Miller
Deshaun
comes
Watson.
back from he's back from the clouds. I'm pretty concerned that Deshaun Watson hurt his shoulders and there aren't any massage therapists that will help him. This is great. Yeah, the thing is, you take out his one game against the Colts where he put up -2 points, and you're looking at someone who's averaging over 15 points per game still. So that would put him in quarterback 16 territory, right? And that's without him shining and super performing. And where he's currently valued, like you were saying, Frank, is not too far ahead of the likes of a Sam Howell. So I think the only one true answer is to just hold, because worst case scenario.
Off that point, do you think it's a buy low?
Opportunity
for
I'm all
like what would you give
Deshaun
up?
Watson, the football player, I'm always gonna go and acquire because I think I'm higher than people are. Deshaun Watson, the person,
obviously, yeah,
yeah, go away. But
just for like dynasty, like it's like what do you? Because if you do think like you mentioned, he's still averaging over 15 points a game around QB 16, which is still like solid QB2 play. I'd assume this is the lowest his price has been since like the whole like since he wasn't playing for the 2 years. So I don't know, like
it's lower than that. Like it's at like
it's even lower.
If there's a team that is, let's say, like 2-5, 3-4, and they might be looking for players, and you offer them random like, 5 first. I mean, how often is that getting rejected now?
A random first for Deshaun Watson.
If I'm a decent team, right? I'm in the playoffs right now. I offer them my 25 first, maybe a first and a third. 25 first, 25 third. What are the odds that gets accepted across most? I think it's starting to creep up right now. If someone were to get offered that, especially if they were looking to start players, then
I definitely think you'd find a decent amount of people that would say yes.
Yeah, I think Deshaun could be had for a singular first in certain leagues. I think you could get Deshaun for a first. I wouldn't trade Deshaun for a first or a first and a second. But I like look, if you're telling me this is a mid to late first, I'm not acquiring a better quarterback than Deshaun for that mid to late first. So
what do you think it would take on top of Kenny Pickett to get? Thinking about it from a perspective.
The problem is Kenny. Like you're almost better just moving Kenny Pickett into something else and then moving it into Deshaun because it is Kenny Pickett. It just kind of has a stink to it. Although it outscored points this week more so because Deshaun scored negative points.
Yeah, that's why I'm thinking it might with the Steelers actually winning games. It might just be worth holding Kenny Pickett, figuring it out, and telling him.
Like, do you
I
think
think
Kenny
I think this
Pickett,
week was a good week for Pickett too.
Kenny Pickett and an early second? Does that get Deshaun? Kenny Pickett in a late first?
I think Pickett in the early second should. I
That
think.
worth is a rebuild.
Yeah,
I think so. Unless you really believe in Pickett.
because I
If
don't
somebody-
think.
I really
Like-
believe in that early second.
Yeah, but like, what quarterback are you picking? If we're saying you can only use it on quarterbacks, right? I don't think you're getting better quarterback value than that. Because
No, I would just try to swing for the best rookie player I could get, and then
yes, yeah, and then you can
go
end up
by
with like
the
an
all odds that
A10.
I can value.
True.
We're in the mountains, Robert Miller.
The mountains.
Oh, I hope.
Cool.
Yeah, like I guess all in all, I'm not really super panicked on Deshaun. Like it's unfortunate if you acquired him up until now, you've probably paid, and it sucks. But like JT had said, he's still putting up average numbers outside of last week, and his long-term prospects are going to be better than most around him. So it's that the problem is though for trying to buy him low, unless you're paying that first round price, I think you just have to have a QB in a deal, and you get into that weird spot. It's like, okay, what quarterback do you? Maybe Jordan Love, but does Love have the hype? Like, how do you get in on? Have to maybe like you have to do Jared Goff or a Baker. At that point, is it worth?
Oh
Is
yeah,
Watson still ahead of Goff?
I would move either of those guys for Watson.
Watson and Goff have to be pretty similar in value.
I would assume so.
What about like Brock Purdy? If you tried to get Brock Purdy,
Yeah, so Jared Goff's even ranked ahead of Deshaun Watson.
That doesn't really shock me.
Yeah, I would do any of those. Purdy plus Goff plus. I definitely think Deshaun's in the league longer for these guys. I think over the long term, he's going to outscore those guys. He's still only 28. Has been a top 5 quarterback, which cannot be understated how difficult that is. We just need him to refine that form at some point, or even a semblance of that form. Because if he could be top 10, he's already out producing those guys. Those guys aren't top 10 producing quarterbacks. So if you're getting him plus, I'd definitely do that.
we can go into Brock Purdy now that I kind of mentioned him. So Brock Purdy with back-to-back rough-ish week. I mean, this guy has taken a real setback in your evaluation of.
The insanity run is over.
It just made me feel more vindicated, I would say, because I've never been a Brock Purdy guy and think that he's being propped up.
Yeah, I know JT's even a little bit lower than I am on Purdy, but I feel like us two and Frank, I'm not like 100% sure remembering wise what was your stance on Purdy beforehand, but I feel like neither of us really had him like entering that like almost second tier of quarterbacks, which some people were starting to put him in. At least like the back end of it. So like the past 2 performances doesn't really do anything for me, really. I guess more so just to like calm some of the hype he's been getting, because some of like the QB rankings I've seen for him have started to get like really high and higher than I would ever happen.
Well, I was listening to Pardon My Take, which is not a Dynasty football podcast, but this was a couple weeks ago prior to the Cleveland game when he just beat up on Dallas. And they were calling him a top 10 NFL quarterback. And they're like, you have to.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. And like,
Yeah.
top 5 in the MVP race. I was like, for people who had him like that high, yeah. But I feel I just never viewed him like to that level.
I've never met one of those people that are playing in one of my Dynasty leagues. I've not seen anyone trade Brock Purdy at a top 10.
Yeah.
I think
I've
not
not
that I
seen
don't
any-
think it doesn't exist. Like, yeah, it does, but where is it?
I know.
Like, are those just outliers? Because you could also go through some of the recent trades, and we can go for basically most players and just find ridiculous trades for them. Like, I can probably go through Jared Goff and find someone that's traded like 2 firsts for Jared Goff. So I think I'm more on Lunas's side, where it's like I don't really think that these like yeah, if you had Brock Purdy as a top 10 QB, then this is like the push back to reality. But I think for the vast majority of us who had him more like that high end range, it's like, well, he's a high end Q, right? And I don't know, you some of the top weapons on your offense, it's not going to be.
Hmm.
That being said, like in terms of what I thought of Brock Purdy specific, he has this problem recently where he's like missing people high over the middle,
Yeah, he almost got George Kittle killed yesterday.
and it's leading to some bad plays. That seems so. I'm not. I think it is that little bit of pressure that's impacting him. But it's weird though because most of the time he's been pretty against pressure. He just has those handful of plays a game, 3 plays a game where he just completely sails someone, and it's leading to these interceptable passes, right? And for a guy that's thrown none now, like that last game against the Vikings, he could have easily had another one or
Yeah. And same within the Browns game on like the final drive where they eventually missed the field goal. Like at the beginning of that drive, he threw it right to a Browns corner. It was just a drop pick. I feel like he doesn't do well playing, and I hate this talking point, but it's kind of been the case for the past few games where like if his team falls behind, he just starts to force it, and he starts to like lose some of his touch on, especially some of the throws deep across the middle, versus just kind of being able to stay on script where like the 49ers have a lead, just get it across or to Debo, dump off to McCaffrey, etc. Ayuk going deep, but yeah, I don't know. I have him just as like a QB. I never had him entering like it's like the top 12 dynasty quarterbacks. He's a QB too, so it's for me that doesn't really have a big impact.
I will say that they were moving the ball yesterday. That wasn't really too.
Yeah,
They had a couple. They had a handful of penalties that really killed, and McCaffrey and their running game getting cut down was definitely like a major.
hmm,
But yeah, I don't know. It was an interesting round because like just those weird scenarios where a team all up and down the field get around like that 30-yard line, their offense shut down.
I
yeah.
am really interested to see how he plays this because again, like his like really poor passes have kind of come when he's like trying to like lead the offense from behind. They play Cincinnati this week. I'm interested if it's going to be a third straight game where it's like he has to try to keep up with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase.
If CMC, well, first off, that pass defense, that San Francisco pass defense, it felt like every third and long Minnesota converted, which I don't think will be the typical case. I don't think that
It
pass defense
won't.
is as bad as it looked.
And you want to know
Um,
why? It's because Big Kirko was on another level yet. He was
yeah,
crazy.
he was dicing them. Um, yeah, and maybe this game's completely different if CMC doesn't fumble there on that first drive and Moody kicks that field goal. And they
Addison
don't give
catch
it
too.
to.
That could have been a pick, and then it's turned into a touchdown at the end of the half. Right?
Yeah,
Like
That was
yeah,
fire how him in the same corner like did it to each
twice.
other.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so maybe it's a different game, and maybe we're not even talking about Brock Purdy because then only last week would have been an aberration, and then this week would have been Brock Purdy's back to normal. Um, so yeah, I kind of agree with Lunas there. I do want to see how this goes against Cincinnati because I think 3 straight bad weeks for Brock Purdy,
Mhm.
you're gonna see the panic
Yeah.
button get closer. It's not gonna be hit, but people are gonna be sliding it on their desk. It's gonna be within range.
so. What is your prediction right now in terms of Brock Purdy? Is he like in your eyes guaranteed to be the starter next year still? That like how do
I
you
just
guys
don't know
view?
how this team replaces him because they're not
Yeah.
going to be.
Because they're just because of the talent of the roster, like I think them and Philly are kind of in a crash course for the NFC Championship game. And if Brock Purdy at the end of the season has like decent numbers and you look up, they have, I don't know, 12, 13 wins. And even if they lose in the NFC Championship game again, I don't see them replacing. Like I
Also,
think his job is safe
now the
for
cap,
next year
I'm
at the
thinking too,
minimum.
though, because you have him so cheap too, you're almost like, even if he's
Yeah.
not the most optimal, you're incentivized to keep him starting because you have such an
He's
advantage
so
there.
cheap. What I
'Cause-
do think is interesting, someone brought it up because of the dates of how his contract is set up. Because if he was literally the last pick in the draft, I can double check it, but I'm like 99% sure I heard one of like the ESPN cap analysts bring up this point. They can't franchise tag him after his rookie deal. It would have to just be a second contract.
Hmm. Okay. Um.
So I think that's the interesting part in terms of
Yeah.
long term Brock. But I think definitely next year he's the lock in starter.
Well, here's the like. So the big name free agent coming out, if he doesn't get traded and extended, which sounds like he won't be, is Kirk Cousins, Big Kirko. Who on that team I think is
Oh man,
very
that'd
much
be
a Super Bowl
He's
contender.
he's Shanahan's like dream quarterback.
Yeah, but he does carry the weight of 40 million
Yeah,
plus.
I mean,
per-
I just
Yeah, can they afford?
even with him be free agent. Well, yeah, one, San Francisco can't afford him with how many guys they pay on that defense and offense. Two, I feel like that would be malpractice. Like even if the Vikings want to move on, to just let him go for nothing, because you can get a first round pick in the NFL for Kirk Cousins.
So
You
don't think so?
right now? You could, yeah.
yeah, but I mean the thing is like you're gonna have to sign and extend him and all that other stuff. I guess like well, what was Aaron Rodgers? Like a first and 2 seconds or something like that?
Yeah, and I
Now
have
it
more
might-
faith in Kirk to play like more years.
I
True.
just all in all, really quickly, tie it back to Brock Purdy. I was just wondering what the consensus was right now on his long term outlook. 'Cause obviously, the people think he's a top 10. Yeah, he's
Hmm.
be their starting quarterback for the next 50. But
I feel good about him for 1 year, and that's as much as I'm gonna give you.
because there's still this little dude on my shoulder who's like, well, what if he just loses like 4 straight? Then what? Like, is
You
he
think
still the
Sam Darnold's
franchise
in there?
QB then? Because what does NFL stand for? Not for long.
Thank you,
You know,
Frank.
like, just wondering if anyone else felt that way.
I'm pulling
I like
up,
him. He's playing well.
pulling up their schedule. I mean, it's not like you get the Bengals, like Luna said, then the Jags, which is not a guaranteed win. I guess in the NFL there aren't any guaranteed wins.
That game in Philadelphia is going to be spicy.
Yeah, between the Bengals, Jags, Bucks, Seahawks, Eagles, and then Seahawks again, you have 2 big divisional games, 3 playoff teams, and the Bucks. So it's not an easy schedule.
No,
for
it's
sure.
definitely not. But then again, they are the 49ers, right? Like,
They are the 49ers.
when you're looking at the schedule as anyone else, you're like, oh shit, those 49ers. Like,
Yeah. On the flip,
they're
flip,
right.
you're gonna say
Yeah, on
it.
the flippity
Yeah.
flop.
Okay, so that was our Brock Purdy talk. From one quarterback who's been very shaky to another who just hasn't been able to put it together since the play action
Been brutal.
magic has ran out is Jordan Love. They played a defense that the Miami Dolphins put up 70 points against, almost a NFL record. Teams have just been constantly beating up against this Broncos defense, and then you have Jordan Love unable to do essentially anything against this team. Is this just like it's over kind of thing, or do we still have any kind of hope?
He's gonna get the rest of the season to be able to start. And I do feel bad to an extent in terms of like it's not like he has like the most amazing weapons. Aaron Jones, who I think not dynasty wise, just like right now, talent wise, is probably their best offensive skill player, and he hasn't been healthy since week 1. I know he just came back this week, but he was on limited snap count. Christian Watson has been in and out of the lineup, and then you just got like Romeo Dobbs, AJ 3-yard Dylan.
I think
Yeah,
that's
so-
been the issue for me, is that their running attack has been dog shit.
Yeah, they had a good one. Like week 1, it's just Aaron Jones hasn't been healthy because it was like a hamstring, and they've just like he tried to come back a couple weeks ago, re-injured it, and then last week he only got like 8 touches, or this past Sunday. So if he can get like fully healthy, I think that'll be a small boost. I think Jordan Love. I won't say like it's over because
I will.
he's still gonna get the rest of the season, but it's been rough the past few weeks. I'd be concerned.
The problem is that I said it was over like 4 years ago. So, like, and I've just been reiterating that ever since. You
Yeah, but
sold him for
there
a
was
first
like
year
there
like
was
you
like the
did.
whole like Jordan Love community after like the first 2 weeks. It was like we're so back, and now it's over
I
again.
I feel like though there's still if I had Jordan Love, I have Jordan, I'm still because anti Kenny Pick, even though he is like he's had that 1 week. In my opinion, you still can sell him on the chance that Brown and Aaron back and all this hasn't been hasn't been like a prime time game where he's played like complete dog shit to where value is just tank, right? That hasn't.
I don't know that Thursday night football against
Against the Lions, was it?
against the Raiders, where he threw 3 picks.
Yeah, that one.
That was bad.
Yeah, you think I still get a second if you mass offered him out though. Whereas
I
Kenny
do think
Pickett,
you
I'm not
can
sure
get
you
a.
can.
Yeah,
I think if you're going into like future years, also like 2025 mass offer, I think you can get a second.
I think you could get a second for both those guys if you just mass offered them. Would I take the second? Yeah, I would.
Both just mass offer. I
Yeah.
still don't
Wait,
know what to do
who's
with
the
Pickett in my
second?
reboot.
Jordan Love
I
and
tried to get
Jordan Love and who?
Kenny
Pickett?
Pickett. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, Baker.
No, Kenny Pickett.
I
the
tried
second,
to get
but-
Baker with.
Yeah. Yeah, I would mass offer either for a second because they're just not. To me, they're not franchise guys. They're going to be replaceable, and I have questions as to whether or not they're like journeyman kind of quality caliber players. I feel a little better about Kenny Pickett being that than Jordan Love, but not much. So for me, I'd just take the second.
Got a second and a third.
Yeah, if I could get it,
That
Jordan
push-
Love. Jordan Love. I definitely think you have the better chance of doing that. I think that can happen, especially needy quarterback teams. Dan Jones, Justin Fields going down. Like maybe those teams, Anthony Richardson, those teams were counting on those kind of players. Don't have them. I'm sure more players are going to get injured in the next couple weeks. Trade deadline coming up. I think you get a second and third for Jordan Love.
JR says I think he's Broncos as donkeys, getting better each.
I like it.
Yeah, I agree with. Have been.
That's true. Do you think this is a team though that trades, kind of off topic, but trades portions of their defense? Because I know that Jerry Judy's been rumored, but like, what about Surtain or
No,
other guys? No.
no shot on certain about it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they could trade Jeudy, but I think that's a Jeudy issue, not really a on a tank issue.
Okay. Any more thoughts on Jordan Love? Okay, so this one I added, but I feel like we've talked about him for a few weeks now in different circumstances. But Jakobi Meyers has been out targeting Devontae Adams. And is that just a
Jimmy G effect?
Not even Jimmy G, because it's like Aiden O'Connell and Brian Hoyer, but like is that what's going on here? Is that like a backup quarterback kind of thing, or are we starting to see Devontae Adams actually start to fade out and Jakobi Meyers being the true alpha?
I definitely don't think it's Devontae Adams like regressing. I mean, obviously he's getting older, but I still think like talent wise, like on any Sunday like this season, going into next Sunday, talent wise, he's a top, what do you want to say, 5 to 7 receiver in football, and that's kind of me being conservative. I just think it's kind of been the scheme and the quarterback play, which is it just kind of hasn't fit right. And I wouldn't be surprised if Adams was on a different team. I think he'll stay on the Raiders this year, but for next season.
Right. I think the issue that teams are still like doubling, right, shifting coverages, but you don't have that chemistry Adams had with Rodgers, and now it's like, how do you want like Brian Hoyer to? Brian Hoyer, if you watch that Raiders Bears game, is already struggling with accuracy outside the numbers and downfield. Like want to just take the one-on-one Mayer or Jakobi Meyers, who Jakobi Meyers has been winning, he's been putting up good numbers, or do you want to try to do route shit Monte Adams? Like I think it's said than done when a team double team, like hard doubling him. Yeah, when you have the chemistry with Rodgers, they're able to make it kind of look easy. Have a Brian Hoyer, have a G off season, right? Like I can understand why it's shakier, but yeah, I think it kind of just comes to the same team right now. It's not really a Devonte Adams is trash now, but I also don't think he's going to get traded. Kind of an issue.
This
Yeah.
season, I think definitely for the rest of this season he's going to be a Raider. I think it's more gets interesting like this offseason heading into next year, where I
Right.
see it possibly happening. I think a report came out saying that the Raiders wouldn't like for the rest of this regular season he'll stay in Vegas, but after that we'll see.
Dude, it just like this whole Raiders team is going to just crumble. It seems like.
Yeah. Well, especially with McDaniels there, I just think he's not the guy.
I
um,
don't know what it is. I like McDaniel. The guy can run an offense. He's just
I've
can't run an entire team. He's not a head coach.
yeah, I've heard he's not.
There are some teams that I just don't know what like their direction is,
Wait.
and they're just kind of like in purgatory. Go ahead, JP.
I've heard that it goes around the league that he's not the most favored guy in
Not a
locker
player
room.
coach.
Yeah, that he's kind of he takes that out of the Bill Belichick playbook, but to a more extensive degree, I think. There have been a few different interviews I've seen where they talk about McDaniels and kind of just hate on him. So whether or not that's true, I don't know, but there seems to be a lot of smoke with players just not liking McDaniels.
Yeah, that's crazy. Different world because I feel like every coach used.
True. Yeah, it's a different time. I'm saying that like I'm not the same age as most of the players in
Well,
the
no,
NFL
it's
right
just
now.
like that. But that's who we grew up, right? That's kind of what we
Yeah.
guys.
hmm
All right, let's get into Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore out of the
Well, yeah.
doghouse.
So I wanted to bring this up because I did find it interesting. Last year, when he was on the Jets prior to getting traded to the Browns this offseason, Elijah Moore had 65 targets through 16 games. He's already got 43. Hasn't done much with those targets yet in terms of producing fantasy points, but is this kind of like I personally think we're starting to see the reemergence of Elijah Moore, and I was wondering if you guys were feeling the same way.
I feel the same way. And I kind of noticed that early in the season where like the production wasn't fully there yet, at least consistently, but he'd been getting consistent targets and a good snap percentage. So that's where I was kind of always encouraged, like that eventually his usage would increase if like the Browns offense just kind of had a few more high scoring games. And especially if like Watson can pick it up a little bit. So I'm in on the Elijah Moore resurgence. I'm a believer.
Yeah, I'm kind of in. I'm just not like an I'm in. I'm gonna go out and offer for Elijah Moore kind of in. But it definitely is in. I think the scenario that I think I'm a contender and I want to my second in on the Elijah Moore actually gets accepted. Realistically, how much more up to get involved? I still question viability compared to I just pay a little bit to get someone I can plug and play territory. That's kind of the issue that I have with him. Right now he's still in this like speculative investment.
True. I
I
screwed
just
something.
love Elijah Moore prospects still. Go back and you
Hmm.
look at his numbers, skill set, and everything.
Oh, I loved him coming into the draft.
He's a beast.
Yeah.
It's just like he just kind of needs to figure it out.
He's currently 32nd in the league in terms of targets, although I don't have it as targets per game. So he's already had his bye week. So it's probably up. The actual number is probably up a little bit higher than that. But that puts him around the likes of Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Calvin Ridley, Pickens, Amari Cooper, D Hop, Addison, Brandon Ayuk. Like,
Yeah, it means he'd be at around like over 7 targets a game, right?
How much is he?
I I think like what you're saying, I think like seconds, right? Like a second territory. I don't think it's much more than that. I don't even know if it is that actually.
It's a second, and then from there it's just like where in the second round. It's definitely
Because
not.
it looks
first.
like, yeah, definitely not a first. Looks like, I mean, Keep Trade Cut says a late second's worth more than him. I definitely think you have to give up at least a second. But the thing is, like, where you get the benefit is it's kind of similar to the Jakobi Meyers, Deontay Johnson of the world. We don't have any touchdowns with Elijah Moore, right? Like, say he catches 2 touchdowns, that's completely different in terms of his fantasy output because we haven't even seen a double-digit point game out of him yet. We have all these targets and not a whole lot of points coming from them. And I think that's something that's bound to change.
Yeah, I just wonder how I should.
Kenny Pickett.
Yeah.
I was just thinking that Kenny Pickett. Yeah. I'm trying to think of like what else, like he's still only 23. That's crazy. I mean, looking at receivers around him, I just don't think those guys actually go. Like I don't think you're able to flip Tutu Atwell for Elijah Moore. So
I'd rather have Elijah Moore.
I think most would. So that's where it gets a little tricky. You might be able to though move off like an Adam Thielen, like someone that's just going crazy right now. You might be able to sell high on him and move into Elijah Moore. Someone like Gabe Davis, who just always has that name value. After those guys, it gets a little hairy as to what you can do. I'm just looking at other receivers ranked around him. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because it was something I found interesting.
Right,
If you guys don't have
the range of players around that, this is almost like a separate segment though. Like the range of players around that mid late second, I've really been thinking, is it really trying to invest in those players, or do I just want to up all seconds? Like that mid late second, it is a little bit volatile. The hits go from pick out of the time, right?
yeah.
Whereas how many times does Elijah Moore pan out into first round pick? Like its upside is it pans out into Mixon paradox territory.
Probably. The difference is you just get the points now, kind of. You know what I'm saying? Like you get the points, you
Guess it
don't
depends.
worry about it failing.
In the case of Elijah Moore, I guess that would, if he were to turn around, he probably would. I don't know. It's
It's tricky.
because it's just so gets moved that early into their.
Yeah. I do think with a lot of those guys in that range, it is a case by case situation. Because if you look at like that late second value, like someone like in Elijah Moore's situation is completely different than I see like an Adam Thielen in that same range. Like, where it would be completely different types of teams that are interested in either player for different reasons. And then there's like that kind of like the somewhat not like disappointing, but like the first round picks that haven't done a ton yet that you're still waiting.
Because like if you're asking me from draft time, 07 versus Elijah Moore, I'm gonna be hard pressed to not just take to it.
I might go Elijah Moore. The thing is,
I think I would lean Elijah Moore, but I'd want to see who's on the board. Like I'm looking at like this tier of guys that you're referencing, and like there were some that I would take over 207, and then some that I'm just like no fucking shot.
Like I think this time last year, Keyshawn Butte was still like it wasn't looking great, but he was still decent.
Like later half second round.
Yeah.
But part of it's not even 207 in itself, because you look through all the 207s and beyonds and start analyzing the hit rate. But it's that part of the argument, how much 7 plus the fact that I think guaranteed draft time.
True.
Plus, like the overall liquidity, I can then compare. I trade 7, go 1, go 2, like stuff like that. I think it's. I don't know. It's Elijah Moore. Again, he's a player, and I do want Elijah. I might consider what in my contender league if I can pick. I just don't think it's gonna happen.
Yeah, I also don't, but worth a shot.
I wonder, like in startups, like a start now, if
where he goes.
Yeah, where is?
I don't know if it's Ben.
I see him being probably a pretty solid buy in startup drafts. Like I think that's where you can really get him cheap.
So too.
Yeah, I don't think it's risky when you probably look like the guy. Whenever you pull it up, JT, the guys that he's probably going around and stuff.
Not even loading for me at this point.
Oh, it's not working on your end.
Oh, here it goes.
Like the guys that he's going around probably.
Seeing as Deshaun is still 204, I'm gonna go with it has not been updated. And maybe I'm looking at like a cookies version kind of thing. But he was going in the 10th round, Elijah Moore, end of the 10th round.
Yeah, it's like part of it for me is that if I'm a contending team, I would much rather just have Indy Elijah Moore. That would probably likes of like Button, Tyler Lockett, those types of players, like a Jakobi Meyers. I don't know where they are, like relative. Are all probably priced in that. So many times I'm buying Elijah Moore then, or if I'm thinking going to value.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so moving on from Elijah Moore, we do have 2 tight ends with a golden opportunity to prove their worth, I would say, in these coming weeks. We have Zach Ertz going on IR, opening the door for Trey McBride. Any optimism there, boys?
I think you have to, simply because he was already open for Zach Ertz on IR. And now that Zach Ertz, like if you look a couple of weeks ago, the snaps and targets had. And now with him on IR, it's like, well, he's probably only going to get more.
I'd agree. And Kyler Murray should be coming back sometime soon, I would imagine.
But within the next 3 games, it's guaranteed.
Yeah.
Activate.
Yeah. So it actually might be within the next 2, because isn't it a 21-day window?
Yeah. So there's optimism there. The thing with me though is I kind of flipped on Trey McBride, where I thought he was very good, and now I think he's just okay. So I did just trade off this little bit of hype. I traded him in a third for a second. Just because I like you're saying, Frank, I like the seconds, where I think in the second, third, and 20 league, I have like 8 seconds or something like that. I just think they're going to keep growing value. It is weird though, because it's a 14-team league, so they're not as great
The
like
tank off. I loved
football.
you and that matchup, the 31 to
Yeah, is
20.
pizza is
No,
pizza
I
R
saw
in
it and
here?
I was like, how is this even possible? And then I looked at like you guys were fucking who did you play again? It was
Pizza R. He was in
greatest
chat
taxi
before.
squad of all time.
Yeah, he's got Drake London,
Yeah,
Garrett Wilson, Jameer Gibbs,
Yeah,
Addison.
when I
and
said the
Josh
taxi
Downs.
squad was hilarious, he was like, "You could trade for someone." I was like, "I didn't mean that as a diss. That's credit to you. Like, it's an absurdly good taxi squad.
90. He's
You're able
got
to just keep him on
he
there."
had 90 points on his taxi squad this week, which would have
Yeah.
won him a few matchups.
And one of them
yeah,
was like Garrett Wilson, who's on bye.
yeah. Yeah, solid team from Pizza R. I'm out tanking him though. But yeah, back to Trey McBride. I think there is some optimism, but I don't think he's going to ever separate himself from the Waste Lords. So
I don't disagree. Like, realistically, how different is he going to someone like Kate Otten,
yeah,
right?
that's exactly what I was thinking too.
So I don't mind you using bump to get that move, but I think the only run into that Trey McBride and Kate Otten alike are two players that could kind of just sell and slowly meander their way into better production that have seen tap all at once.
Mhm.
But Kincaid, I think, is the type of player that we have that zap boom.
For sure.
I'm actually like the I had thought that Dawson Knox in the passing game was a lot of mistakes, and I was surprising how they were this point. So now we all of those targets, guys, and I think this is going to be a big bump for the. Not going to come phase, but passing attack actually be.
Yeah,
I agree. I'm surprised they hadn't gotten Kincaid more involved this season. I know he's a rookie, but still.
I mean, he's been involved, but it was kind of like they're sharing snaps. You're running the two tight end snaps, two tight end sets. There we go. And with Kincaid though, we were seeing he was at 80% week 1, and then he dropped down to 60% snap share week 2, and then he's been hovering around that 50-60% rate since. Although he did just have 8 targets against New England. I mean, if he's getting anything more than him, we're seeing an easy tight end 1 season from Dalton Kincaid, which would then, I think, put him in top 5 tight end conversation if he's not already. Let me see. Just kind of the whole Freiermuth effect all over again, what we've been seeing. I definitely think if you were to buy Kincaid right now, other than like a massive injury or something, I don't think there's any real downside. All right, he's currently tight end 6, but he's less than 4,000 keep trade cut points, which is not. It puts him in the range of James Cook, Rashee Rice, Josh Downs. I think buying
Graz is not higher.
Yeah, I think buying Kincaid now, whether or not he has a tremendous season or an actual like really good season, I think by the time the offseason comes around, you're going to be able to sell him for more.
Right, if you can get him at that price. And I guess just the last point, tight ends have masked by other.
Mhm.
But yeah, it could be pretty solid for King. I don't think it's going to be. I don't think he's going to come out here and should see a solid like 7 target. Nice for tight end land.
Yep.
Crap, I had some. Oh, so what's it? Something about ended off on this discussion.
Okay.
I don't know how that impacts the picks. Initially, I had come in that league valued. Actually, what we don't think about is that extra speed of depth at the back end of your roster that it then kind of value of picks because back high value picks and kind of like obviously they hit trade them for you can kind of create depth that way as well.
Mhm.
I think
No,
it's
that's a good point. The 14 teams leagues, it's like when you have some guys on bye or like injuries, like you look at some of the players you're forced to start, and it's just like Jesus Christ, because your bench is like depleted.
like I do think it definitely values round pick, and I round picks at that point in the draft, like your round of back, and really starting to get into that point. And I'd actually argue that like those types of players don't really they have just as bad hit like waiver right? Like some of the better guys you could pick up in the draft will probably be by waivers, right? Like the Mario Douglas is not even drafted in a draft. So those types of picks are definitely devalued. I'm not really sure about the third. I haven't looked enough, but I actually don't think seconds are as devalued as you would like. They first um like the late first has a little bit more downside because now instead about championship, kind of worried about that first up in the semifinals.
Yeah.
True. True. But yeah, I guess from your overall theme and what you're saying, there is that point of like, yeah, what's an early second in a 14 team league is more of a mid second in your typical 12 team league. But at the same time, with the 14 team league, there's more depth and everything. So someone like a Tyler Lockett is much more valued in that kind of league than they are in a 12 team league. So there's give and take. Um,
Yeah, if you're like Tyler Lockett, harder question mark, have an insanely strong.
yeah, exactly. My team put up 30 points this week.
Well, at least with how many players we're starting as well, because we kind of start a good amount of players, so have a solid lineup, and like also you can get completely decimated by injury. Like I think that the real contenders in both teams are
Mhm.
not completely like in our home, right? Like I like to consider myself a pretty able to lose players like Lamar Jackson and up and whatever, but have success, right? Like in a 14 and Cooper up, it's like, dude, ooh, that fucking hurts. That hurts.
Yeah, yeah.
Or you would have to make a trade.
So yeah, that's just one thing I mean, going back to the first, you trade for random first, best team in the playoffs. So that's another little advantage for random first.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know. It's something that I'd kind of realized recently. I didn't think of that first. Think, oh, picks back first, picks less value.
Yeah, agreed. Do you guys have anything else to add on the 12 versus 14 team and the draft pick combo? No, I can't see you, Frank. So
No, I don't know. I'm just trying to think.
okay,
No, I've got nothing.
okay. I was also a little distracted. Sorry, because I'm about to chirp Parker back in our second, third, and 20 league.
Yeah, it's okay.
All right, but yeah, if you guys made it, thank you so much for watching. Really like and subscribe. Really helps out. Catch you next Tuesday. Out. Good luck with matchups. Have a good.